The transport ship descended through the pink clouds of Viridian Prime, and Tae-sung pressed his face against the window, like a child seeing snow for the first time. Below them, the capital city of the Galactic Council stretched across the horizon. Buildings made of crystal and light rose thousands of feet into the air. Flying vehicles moved in perfect streams between the towers. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Ambassador will be landing in 5 minutes," the pilot announced through the intercom. The pilot was human, one of only 30 humans currently off Earth. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Council 6 months ago, and they were still very new to all of this. Tae-sung straightened his suit and looked at the young woman sitting across from him. Hana was 26 years old, fresh out of university with degrees in linguistics and mathematics. She had her nose buried in a tablet, studying the alien languages she would need to know. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the standard diplomatic uniform that Earth had designed for these missions. "Are you nervous?" Tae-sung asked her. Hana looked up and smiled. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also excited. We're the first humans most of these aliens will ever meet. We need to make a good impression." Tae-sung nodded. He was 45 years old and had spent 20 years in Earth's diplomatic service. But nothing in his training had prepared him for this. Representing humanity to alien species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years was a responsibility that kept him awake at night. The ship touched down on a landing platform that seemed to be made of solid light. As the doors opened, the air that rushed in smelled sweet, like flowers mixed with something metallic. 3 aliens waited to greet them. The first was tall and thin with blue skin that seemed to shimmer. It had 4 arms and large black eyes. The second was covered in fur and walked on 4 legs, though it stood upright like a centaur from Earth mythology. The third was the most unusual, a being that looked like it was made of living crystal, reflecting light in rainbow patterns. "Welcome to Viridian Prime," the blue alien said in perfect English. The translator device in Tae-sung's ear wasn't even necessary. "I am Velcris, the keeper of the Grand Archive. I will be your guide today." Tae-sung bowed respectfully. "Thank you for hosting us. I am Ambassador Tae-sung, and this is my assistant, Hana. We are honored to be here." Velcris made a gesture that might have been a smile. "The honor is adequate," it said. The words were polite, but the tone suggested otherwise. "Follow me. The council has arranged a tour of our most important historical sites." They walked through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they moved. Hana whispered to Tae-sung, "The walls are alive. They're made of some kind of programmable matter." "Don't touch anything," Tae-sung whispered back. The Grand Archive was enormous. It was a building the size of a small city, filled with the collected knowledge of thousands of alien species spanning millions of years. Holographic displays showed ancient texts, scientific discoveries, and artistic works from civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humans had even learned to make fire. Velcris led them through gallery after gallery, each one more impressive than the last. The furry alien, who introduced itself as Morik, explained each display in a voice that sounded bored. The crystal being, whose name was Threx, said nothing but seemed to study the humans with interest. "And now," Velcris announced, "we come to the Monument of Unsolved Mysteries." They entered a massive circular chamber. The ceiling was so high that Tae-sung couldn't see the top. Around the walls were hundreds of displays, each one showing a different problem or question that the galaxy's greatest minds had failed to solve. But in the center of the room, raised on a platform and surrounded by a soft blue light, was the largest display of all, the threshold equation. Even looking at it made Tae-sung's head hurt. The symbols seemed to move and shift, rearranging themselves as he watched. Numbers and letters from a dozen different mathematical systems were woven together in patterns that made no logical sense. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Velcris said, and for the first time there was genuine emotion in its voice. "The threshold equation has stood unsolved for 3,247 years. It is the key to instantaneous travel across any distance, not faster than light, not wormholes, but true instantaneous movement. One moment here, the next moment anywhere in the universe. Why can't anyone solve it?" Hana asked, moving closer to the display. Velcris's forearms moved in what might have been a shrug. "Because it is too complex. The greatest mathematical minds from 50 different species have attempted it, Computers that can process 1 trillion calculations per second have analyzed it. Nothing works. The equation changes based on the observer, based on the method of approach. It is as if it actively resists being solved. Has anyone come close? Taesung asked. Several times. Threx spoke for the first time, its voice like crystal bells chiming. A species called the Vethkor claimed they had found a partial solution 800 years ago. They were wrong. A mathematician from the Quilon spent her entire life on it and made progress, but died before completing her work. No one has been able to follow her methods. Hana walked slowly around the display, her eyes tracking the moving symbols. She tilted her head to one side, then the other. "Can I get closer?" she asked. Velcris made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Of course. Please examine it as much as you like. Many visitors do. Some even attempt to solve it." The condescension in its voice was clear. "None succeed, of course," Morik snorted. "The humans have barely achieved basic spaceflight. No offense intended, but your species is quite primitive compared to the rest of the galaxy. If beings far more advanced cannot solve the threshold equation, what hope do you have?" Taesung felt his jaw tighten, but before he could respond, Hana spoke up. "That's okay," she said cheerfully. "Sometimes being new to something is an advantage. We don't know what's impossible yet." She stepped up onto the platform. The blue light around the equation seemed to respond to her presence, growing slightly brighter. Hana reached out and touched the holographic display. The symbols rippled like water. "Fascinating," she murmured. "It's interactive." "Of course it is," Velcris said. "The equation must be engaged with directly. It cannot be solved from a distance. But I assure you, young human, thousands have tried what you are attempting now." Hana ignored the alien's tone. She moved her fingers through the holographic symbols, watching how they responded. "Do you have something I could write with?" she asked. "I'd like to try working on this." The chamber fell silent. Morik and Velcris exchanged glances. Threx's crystalline body seemed to pulse with light. "You wish to attempt the threshold equation?" Velcris asked slowly. "Right now?" "If that's allowed," Hana said. "I mean, it's here for people to look at, right? And you said visitors sometimes try, so can I?" Taesung stepped forward. "The cultural exchange protocols state that humans should be given the same access to historical and scientific materials as any other species," he said formally. "Unless there's a reason to deny the request?" Velcris's forearms twitched. "No," it said finally. "No reason at all. Threx, please provide the human with a work interface." Threx moved forward and waved one crystalline limb. A holographic workspace appeared in the air next to the equation. "You may use this," it said. "It will record your work and provide computational assistance if needed." "Thank you," Hana said. She rolled up her sleeves and looked at the equation again. Then she smiled. "Okay, let's see what you're hiding." Around the chamber, display screens flickered to life. Throughout the Grand Archive, scholars and visitors received alerts that someone was attempting the threshold equation. Within minutes, aliens began arriving to watch. Some came out of genuine interest. Most came to be entertained by another inevitable failure. But none of them knew what was about to happen. None of them understood that the young human woman standing before the galaxy's greatest unsolved problem had something that 3,000 years of alien brilliance had lacked. She had a completely different way of thinking. The crowd grew larger with each passing minute. Word had spread through the Grand Archive that a human was attempting the threshold equation. Aliens of every shape and size gathered in the circular chamber, filling the viewing galleries that ringed the upper levels. Some floated in the air. Others clung to the walls with specialized appendages. A few existed as clouds of gas contained in force fields. Hana seemed unaware of the audience. She stood before the holographic workspace, her fingers moving through the symbols of the threshold equation. Her eyes tracked back and forth, studying the patterns. "What is she doing?" someone in the crowd whispered. "Probably trying to understand the notation," another voice answered. "That alone usually takes weeks." But Hana wasn't trying to understand the notation. Not exactly. She was looking at the equation the way she had learned to look at languages. When she studied linguistics at university, her professors taught her that every language was built on patterns. Once you found the patterns, you could start to understand the structure. And once you understood the structure, the meaning would follow. She pulled up a clean section of the holographic workspace and started writing. Not the alien symbols from the equation, but simple numbers. Basic arithmetic. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Velcris made a dismissive sound. She's starting from the beginning? This will take years. Tae-sung watched Hana work. He had seen her do this before on the long journey to Viridian Prime. When faced with a new alien language, she would start simple and build up. She would find the basic building blocks and then see how they connected. It was a slow method, but it worked. She knows what she's doing, Tae-sung said quietly. Does she? Morik asked. The threshold equation is not a language. It is mathematics at the highest level. It combines quantum mechanics, dimensional theory, and temporal calculus in ways that most species cannot even comprehend. Starting with basic arithmetic is like trying to build a starship with stone tools. Hana glanced over at Morik. Maybe, she said. But every starship is held together by the same basic forces, right? Gravity, electromagnetism, nuclear forces. They're all just variations on simple rules. So maybe this equation is the same way. Maybe it looks complicated because we're looking at it from too high up. If I start at the bottom and work my way up, I might see something others missed. She turned back to her work. Now she was writing out patterns. Series of numbers that repeated. Sequences that changed in predictable ways. She pulled symbols from the threshold equation and placed them next to her simple patterns, looking for similarities. An elderly alien with 12 eyes and silver skin moved closer to the platform. Interesting, it muttered. She's doing pattern matching. But that approach was tried by the Kolvar Collective 900 years ago. They spent decades on it and found nothing. Did they start this simple? Hana asked without looking away from her work. The 12-eyed alien paused. I don't know. The records show they used advanced pattern recognition algorithms. Algorithms are good at finding patterns they're programmed to look for, Hana said. But sometimes the pattern you need isn't the one you expected. Sometimes you have to just look. She grabbed a cluster of symbols from the equation and moved them into her workspace. Then she started rearranging them. Not solving them, just moving them around like puzzle pieces. What is she doing now? Velcris asked Threx. The crystalline being was silent for a moment, its body pulsing with different colors. I'm not certain, Threx admitted. She appears to be testing different organizational structures. Hana nodded even though the question hadn't been directed at her. The equation keeps shifting, right? The symbols move around. Everyone treats that like a problem. But what if it's a clue? What if the equation is showing us that the arrangement matters more than we think? She started grouping the symbols in different ways. First by their mathematical function, then by their origin, which alien species notation system they came from, then by how often they appeared in the equation. This is a waste of time, Velcris said, louder now. The equation's shifting nature has been studied extensively. It is a defense mechanism, a way to prevent solution. It is not a hint. Maybe, Hana said again. She had a habit of agreeing with criticism without letting it stop her. But in languages, when words move around, it usually means something. Word order matters, so maybe symbol order matters here too. She pulled up another workspace and started writing in Korean. The symbols looked nothing like the alien mathematics, but she didn't seem to care. She was writing notes to herself, working through ideas in her native language. An alien that looked like a floating brain in a jar moved closer. Is she using a primitive script? It asked in a voice that sounded like bubbling water. That's her native language, Tae-sung said, feeling defensive. Korean, it's not primitive, it's just different from yours. My apologies, the brain alien said, sounding genuine. I meant no offense. I am Quillix, a xenolinguist. I study how different species communicate. It's actually quite clever what she's doing. She's keeping her working notes in a system the equation can't adapt to. If the equation responds to observation and methodology, then working in a completely foreign notation might prevent it from changing in response to her approach. Tae-sung looked at Quillix with surprise. I hadn't thought of that. I doubt she did either, consciously, Quillix said. But humans evolved with multiple language systems on your world, yes? You're used to translation, to moving between different ways of expressing the same concept. That cognitive flexibility might be useful here. Hana was now moving faster. She had filled 3 holographic workspaces with notes, diagrams, and calculations. She would look at the threshold equation, write something in Korean, move some symbols around, then look back at the equation again. Her process seemed chaotic without any clear plan. But Tae-sung could see the intensity in her eyes. She was focused in a way he had rarely seen. Whatever she was doing, she believed in it. More aliens arrived. The chamber was now packed with hundreds of observers. Some were taking notes. Others were placing bets on how long the human would persist before giving up. A few were genuinely curious about her approach. "She's been at it for 15 minutes, someone noted. "Most attempts last about an hour before frustration sets in." "The Colmary ambassador tried for 6 hours once," another voice added. Collapsed from mental exhaustion, Hana suddenly stopped moving. She stared at one section of the threshold equation. Her head tilted to the side. Then she reached out and touched a symbol. It was a complex glyph that seemed to represent some kind of dimensional function. "This one," she said. "This symbol appears 17 times in the equation, but it's written slightly differently each time. Is that intentional?" Velcris moved closer. "Of course it's intentional. The variations represent different contextual applications of the same base concept. Any mathematician would understand that." "Right," Hana said. "But in language, when you use the same word multiple times with slight variations, usually you're trying to show a relationship between them. Like different tenses of a verb. They're all connected to the same root." She started pulling out every instance of the symbol, lining them up in her workspace. Then she arranged them in order of their variation. The smallest change first, then gradually more extreme changes. "It's a progression," she murmured. "They're not just contextual variations. They're steps. Like a sequence." Threx moved forward suddenly, its crystalline body ringing like a bell. "Say that again," it said. Hana looked up, startled. I said they might be steps. Like the symbol is showing a progression from one state to another." "Show me," Threx demanded. Hana expanded her workspace so everyone could see. She had arranged the 17 variations of the symbol in a line. When viewed together, they did indeed seem to flow from one to the next like frames in an animation. "The Culver Collective studied this symbol for decades," Threx said slowly. "They treated each variation as independent. They never considered that the variations themselves might be meaningful." "Why would they?" Velcris asked. "The equation contains thousands of symbols. You can't assume every variation is significant." "But what if they are?" Hana asked. She was getting excited now, talking faster. "What if the equation isn't one big problem, but a bunch of smaller problems that talk to each other? What if these variations are the conversation?" She started pulling out other frequently repeated symbols, arranging them the same way. Some formed clear progressions. Others didn't. But slowly a structure was beginning to emerge from the chaos. The crowd had gone quiet. Even the skeptics were paying attention now. What the human was doing shouldn't work. It was too simple, too intuitive. Mathematics was supposed to be rigorous, formal, precise. You couldn't just look at symbols and guess at their meaning. But Hana wasn't just guessing. She was applying the same skills she used to decode languages. Find the patterns, test the relationships, see what connects to what, and somehow, impossibly, it was working. 20 minutes had passed since Hana began working. The Grand Archive's central chamber was now completely silent, except for the soft hum of holographic displays and the occasional whisper of translator devices. Even Velcris had stopped making dismissive comments. The alien stood with its forearms crossed, watching the human work with an expression that might have been confusion. Hana had created a dozen workspaces now, each one showing different aspects of the threshold equation. She had broken the massive problem into pieces and those pieces into smaller pieces. Some parts she had labeled in Korean, others she had color-coded. A few sections were connected by glowing lines that showed relationships she had discovered. "What is happening?" Morik whispered to Threx, the crystalline being pulsed with an orange light. "She's deconstructing the equation, but not the way we've done it before. She's not dividing it by mathematical function or by dimensional layer. I'm not sure what she's doing." An elderly human pushed through the crowd. He was short and round with gray hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. This was Dae-hyun, a retired physics professor from Earth who had joined the diplomatic mission as a scientific advisor. "Ambassador," Dae-hyun said to Tae-sung, slightly out of breath. "I heard a human was attempting the equation. I didn't know it was Hana. She asked to try," Tae-sung said. "I couldn't see a reason to stop her." Dae-hyun moved closer to the platform, studying the workspaces. His eyes went wide. "Oh my," he said softly. "Oh my goodness, what?" Tae-sung asked. "What do you see?" "She's using game theory," Dae-hyun said, pointing to one workspace. "And topology over here. And is that a music theory analysis?" Music theory, Velcris said sharply. The threshold equation has nothing to do with music, doesn't it?
Hana said without looking away from her work.
Pattern, rhythm, harmony, resonance. Music is just math that sounds pretty, or math is just music that looks pretty, depending on how you think about it. She pulled up a new workspace and started drawing wave patterns. They looked like sound waves, rising and falling in regular cycles. Then she overlaid some of the equation symbols on top of the waves. See, she said. When I map these symbols to frequency patterns, they align. Not perfectly, but close enough. Which means they might be describing oscillating relationships rather than static ones. Daehyun laughed, a sound of pure delight. She's treating it like a dynamic system. Not a thing to be solved, but a process to be understood. That's insane, Morik said. The equation is a mathematical construct. It doesn't process anything. How do you know? Hana asked. She was getting into a rhythm now, her hands moving quickly through the holographic interfaces. Just because something is written down doesn't mean it's static. Language changes based on context. Music changes based on how it's played. Why can't math change based on how it's approached? Quillix, the floating brain alien, moved closer. She has a point, it said. The equation does respond to observation. We've always treated that as an obstacle. But what if it's an integral feature? What if the equation is meant to be interactive? If that were true, someone would have discovered it in 3,000 years, Velcris said. But its voice lacked conviction. Hana stopped suddenly. She stared at one of her workspaces for a long moment. Then she started typing rapidly in Korean, her lips moving as she worked through something in her head. What is it? Taesung asked. What did you find? I'm not sure yet, Hana said. But I think the equation has been asking us a question. A question? Threx's body blazed with bright white light. Explain. Hana gestured to the main display of the threshold equation. Everyone treats this as a problem to solve. You plug in values, you work through the operations, you try to get an answer. But what if that's backwards? What if the equation itself is asking us something, and we need to answer it? She pulled up several of her workspace analyses and arranged them in a circle around the main equation. Look at the structure. It's recursive. It references itself. Part A requires information from Part B, but Part B requires information from Part A. That's not a solvable loop. It's a question loop. It's asking, given these conditions, what would make both parts true at the same time? Daehyun slapped his forehead. A self-referential paradox. Like, this statement is false, you can't solve it by calculation. You have to understand what it's asking and provide the context that resolves the paradox. Exactly, Hana said, grinning. And I think I know what the context is. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of species watched the young human woman as she worked. Some were skeptical. Some were hopeful. All of them were curious. Hana started pulling symbols from different parts of the equation, dragging them into a central workspace. She wasn't calculating anything. She was rearranging them like puzzle pieces, looking for a configuration that felt right. This is not rigorous methodology, Velcris protested. Mathematics requires precision, not intuition. Does it? Hana asked. Because humans discovered a lot of math through intuition first and proved it rigorously later. Sometimes you need to see the shape of the answer before you can prove it. She continued arranging symbols. Sometimes she would place one, then shake her head and move it somewhere else. Other times she would put a symbol down and nod, satisfied. It looked random, but Taesung could see the concentration on her face. This wasn't random at all. She's solving it like a crossword puzzle, Quillix observed, fitting pieces together based on how they feel rather than strict calculation. That cannot work, Morik insisted. But it is working, Threx said quietly. Look at the main display. Everyone turned to look at the threshold equation. It was changing. Not the random shifting they had seen for thousands of years, but something different. The symbols were aligning themselves, responding to Hana's work. Sections that had never made sense were starting to form coherent structures. How is she doing this? Velcris whispered. Daehyun stepped closer to Taesung. Do you understand what we're witnessing? He asked quietly. For 3,000 years, the best minds in the galaxy approached this equation the same way. They used logic, computation, rigorous mathematical analysis. All the things they were taught were correct. But Hana wasn't taught those things, not the way aliens were. She learned math and language and music and dozens of other things, and her brain sees all of them as connected. She's using every tool she has, not just the proper mathematical ones. Is that why she can solve it? Taesung asked. That's why she can see it, Daehyun corrected. The equation was never unsolvable. It was just invisible to people who only looked at it one way. Hana made a final adjustment to her arrangement of symbols. Then she stepped back and looked at her work. She tilted her head, considering it from different angles. The entire chamber watched in silence. Okay, she said finally. I think I have it. The equation isn't asking for a mathematical answer. It's asking for a philosophical one. It wants to know, how can something be in two places at once? And the answer is it can't unless it's not really a thing but a relationship between places. It's not the object that moves. It's space itself that connects. She touched the holographic interface and her arranged symbols flowed into the main equation. The threshold equation blazed with light. Symbols began transforming, reorganizing, resolving. The recursive loops untangled themselves. The paradoxes dissolved. The chaos became order. No, Belkris breathed. No, this isn't possible. But it was happening. The threshold equation, unchanged for over 3 millennia, was solving itself. Not because Hana had calculated the answer, but because she had understood the question. The light from the equation grew brighter and brighter, filling the chamber. Aliens shielded their eyes. Humans raised their hands against the glare. And still the equation transformed, symbol by symbol, line by line. Then suddenly, it stopped. The light faded. And where the threshold equation had been, there was now something new. Something simple. Something elegant. An answer. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The Grand Archive's central chamber was frozen in a moment that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. The monument of unsolved mysteries, which had stood unchanged for over 3,000 years, now displayed something that shouldn't exist. A solution. The holographic display showed a series of equations that were almost beautiful in their simplicity. Where before there had been chaos and complexity, now there was order. The recursive loops had unwound. The paradoxes had resolved. The symbols from a dozen different mathematical traditions had merged into a single coherent language. Hana stood on the platform, staring at what she had created. Her hands were shaking slightly. Did I break it? She asked in a small voice. The question broke the spell. The chamber erupted into noise. Aliens of every species began talking at once, shouting, arguing, checking their own computational devices. Some were running calculations to verify what they were seeing. Others were simply standing in shock. Belkris moved first. The tall blue alien rushed to the nearest terminal and began entering commands with all 4 arms. Its fingers moved so fast they blurred. Run verification protocol alpha, it commanded. Cross-reference with historical attempts. Check for computational errors. This cannot be correct. It cannot be. Threx glided forward, its crystalline body pulsing with colors Taesung had never seen before. I am running the verification now, it said, its voice resonating through the chamber. Initial analysis suggests the solution is mathematically sound. That's impossible, Morik said, but it moved closer to look at the display anyway. Daehyun had pulled out his own tablet and was working through the equations. His hands were shaking as much as Hana's. The elegance, he whispered. Look at the elegance of it. The solution was hiding in plain sight. We just couldn't see it because we were looking too hard. More aliens were arriving every second, streaming into the chamber from all parts of the archive. The news was spreading through the galactic network at light speed. A human had solved the threshold equation. A human from a species barely capable of basic space travel. A human who had been working on it for less than half an hour. Quillix floated down to the platform where Hana stood. May I ask you something? The brain alien said gently. Hana nodded, still looking dazed. How did you know what to do? Quillix asked. What made you approach it this way? Hana thought for a moment. I didn't know, she admitted. I tried to understand what the equation was saying. Everyone kept telling me it was the hardest problem in the galaxy, and I thought, why? Why is it hard? And then I realized it was only hard if you approached it a certain way. If you tried to force an answer through calculation and logic, it would resist. But if you listened to it, if you tried to understand what it wanted to tell you, then it would open up. You listened to a mathematical equation, Morik said flatly. Why not? Hana shrugged. I listen to languages. I listen to music. Math is just another way of expressing ideas, so I listened. Threx's body suddenly blazed with brilliant light so bright that several aliens had to look away. Verification complete, it announced, its voice ringing like 1,000 bells. I have run the solution through 17 different computational frameworks. I have tested it against known physical laws. I have simulated its application in theoretical models. The solution is not just correct. It is perfect. The chamber fell silent again. This time the silence was different. It wasn't shock. It was awe. She solved it, someone whispered. A human solved the threshold equation, another voice said, in 23 minutes. A third voice added. Velcris's terminal beeped. The alien looked at the readout, then looked again. Its blue skin turned a shade paler. The Galactic Council is requesting an immediate emergency session, it said. They want the human to present her findings. Taesung felt his heart rate increase. This was bigger than he had imagined. Bigger than anyone had imagined. Hana, he said gently. Are you okay? She turned to look at him and he saw tears in her eyes. I'm scared, she said. What if I made a mistake? What if the verification is wrong? What if you didn't make a mistake, Daehyun interrupted. He held up his tablet. I've been checking your work. Every step makes sense. Every connection is valid. This is real, Hana, you did it. Around them, the crowd was growing larger and more chaotic. Aliens were pushing forward, trying to get closer to the human who had achieved the impossible. Some wanted to examine her. Others wanted to congratulate her. A few looked angry, as if she had stolen something from them. Taesung made a decision. Everyone back, he said, raising his voice. Give her space. Ambassador Hana needs space. Ambassador? Hana said, looking at him in surprise. If you solved the threshold equation, you're no longer just my assistant, Taesung said with a smile. You're going to be the most important human in the galaxy for a while. We'll need to make it official. Threx moved between Hana and the crowd. Despite having no obvious threatening features, the crystalline being's presence was enough to make the other aliens step back. The human requires rest, Threx said, and preparation time before the council session. Everyone who is not essential personnel must leave this chamber now. Surprisingly, the crowd obeyed. Perhaps it was respect for Threx's position as a senior scholar. Perhaps it was recognition that Hana had earned some peace. Slowly, reluctantly, the aliens began to file out of the chamber. Soon only a few remained. Velcris, Threx, Quilix Morik, Taesung, Daehyun, and Hana herself. The holographic display still showed the solution, glowing softly in the center of the chamber. Velcris approached Hana slowly, its forearms held in a gesture that might have been apology or respect. I was wrong, it said simply. I believed your species was too primitive to contribute meaningfully to galactic knowledge. I see now that I confused age with wisdom, and technological advancement with intelligence. You have taught me a valuable lesson today. Hana managed a small smile. It's okay. I understand. We're new. We must seem really basic compared to species that have been in space for thousands of years. No, Threx said firmly. Not basic, different. Your newness is not a weakness. It is a strength. You have not been trained to think in the rigid ways that the rest of the galaxy has developed over millennia. You can see possibilities that we have blinded ourselves to. Quilix bobbed in agreement. The galaxy has stagnated, it said. We have become so focused on maintaining our advanced civilizations that we have forgotten how to innovate. We solve problems with the same methods we have always used, even when those methods fail. But humans are not trapped by tradition. You still remember how to think creatively. What happens now? Hana asked. With the solution, I mean. What will they do with it? Daehyun pulled up a chair that seemed to materialize out of the floor and sat down heavily. They'll test it, he said. They'll build the technology that your solution makes possible. If it works, and I believe it will, then instantaneous travel becomes reality. Ships won't need to spend years crossing space. Cargo can be transported instantly. Communication across the galaxy will be immediate instead of taking decades. You've changed everything, Hana. I just wanted to try, Hana said quietly. I saw the equation and I thought it was interesting. I didn't know it would be this big. The best discoveries often come from people who are simply curious, Threx said. Not from those seeking glory or proving theories. You approached the equation with wonder instead of ambition. That made all the difference. Taesung checked his communication device. The council session is scheduled for tomorrow morning, he said. That gives us time to prepare. Anna, you'll need to explain your process. Can you do that? She nodded, looking more confident now. I think so. I kept notes in Korean, but I can translate them. And I can show the steps I took, the patterns I found. It makes sense to me. I hope I can make it make sense to them. You will, Daehyun assured her. You have a gift for explaining complex ideas simply. That's why you're so good at linguistics. As they talked, making plans for the presentation, the holographic solution continued to glow. Its light cast shadows around the chamber, creating patterns on the walls. Somewhere in those patterns, in the elegant mathematics that Hana had unveiled, lay the key to a new age for the galaxy, and it had all started with a simple question. What is this equation trying to say? 3 weeks had passed since Hana solved the threshold equation. 3 weeks that had changed her life, changed Earth's position in the galaxy, and started changing the way millions of alien species thought about humanity. The Galactic Council session had lasted 6 hours. Hana presented her solution, explaining each step in careful detail. She showed how she had broken down the equation, how she had found the patterns, how she had understood that it was asking a philosophical question rather than demanding a mathematical answer. The council members listened in silence, occasionally stopping her to ask clarifying questions. When she finished, the council voted unanimously to accept her solution as valid and to begin immediate development of instantaneous travel technology. They also voted to grant humanity full status in the council, not as junior members but as equal partners. It was unprecedented. Most species waited centuries to achieve full status. Now Hana sat in a small office that had been assigned to her in the Grand Archive. The walls were made of that same programmable matter that seemed to be everywhere on Viridian Prime, currently displaying a calming pattern of blue and green waves. Outside her window, she could see the city stretching to the horizon, with ships arriving and departing in constant streams. There was a knock on her door. Come in, she called. Tae-sung entered, carrying 2 cups of something that smelled like earth coffee but wasn't quite right. How are you holding up? He asked, handing her a cup. Tired, Hana admitted, but good. 3 universities want me to teach seminars. The Science Council wants me to consult on 5 different unsolved problems, and I've received over 1,000 interview requests. You don't have to accept all of them, Tae-sung said. You can say no. I know, Hana said, but I want to help. If I can solve other problems the way I solved this one, maybe I should try. Another knock on the door. This time it was Threx, its crystalline body reflecting the light from the windows into rainbow patterns across the walls. Ambassador Hana, it said. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Hana said. Please come in. Threx entered, followed by Velcris and Quillix. The 3 aliens had become something like friends over the past weeks. Velcris especially had changed its attitude toward humans. The blue alien now spoke of humanity with respect, even admiration. We wanted to speak with you about something important, Threx said. A proposal. What kind of proposal? Tae-sung asked, immediately alert. As ambassador, any official proposals needed to go through him first. Nothing political, Quillix assured him. Educational. We would like to establish an exchange program. Send human scholars to alien institutions and send alien scholars to Earth. We want to learn your methods of thinking, and we want to share our knowledge with you. Velcris added. The threshold equation was a wake-up call for many species. We realize that we have become too rigid in our thinking, too confident in our superiority. But humanity approaches problems from angles we never consider. That perspective is valuable. More than valuable, Threx said. Essential. The galaxy is stagnated. We recycle the same ideas, the same approaches. We need fresh thinking. We need the kind of creativity that solved a 3,000-year-old problem in minutes. Hana looked at Tae-sung. What do you think? I think it's a great idea, he said. But it's not my decision alone. Earth's government will need to approve it. Of course, Quillix said. We would not expect an immediate answer. But we wanted you to know that the desire for cooperation is strong. Many species are rethinking their attitudes toward humanity. A communication device on Hana's desk chimed. She glanced at it and saw a message from Daehyun. He wants me to meet him in the Hall of Solved Mysteries, she said. Something about a surprise. They all walked together through the archive's corridors. Hana had grown somewhat used to the stares and whispers that followed her everywhere now. Aliens would stop and point. Some would bow respectfully. Others would simply watch her pass with curious eyes. The Hall of Solved Mysteries was smaller than the Monument Chamber, but just as beautiful. Here were displayed the great problems that had been solved throughout galactic history. Mathematical theorems, scientific breakthroughs, engineering challenges. Each one was marked with the name of who solved it and when. Dae-hyun stood before a new display, grinning widely. "Come look," he called when he saw them approaching. The display showed the threshold equation in its original form, then a series of images showing Hana's solution process, and finally the elegant answer. At the bottom, written in letters that glowed with soft light, were the words, "The threshold equation. Unsolved for 3,247 years, solved by Hana of Earth in 23 minutes. Hana felt tears forming in her eyes again. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "You earned it," Dae-hyun said. They moved the equation from the Monument of Unsolved Mysteries to here. And look, they're already putting up a new problem in its place. "What is it?" Taesung asked. "The temporal causality paradox," Threk said. "Another problem that has stumped the galaxy for millennia. It concerns the nature of time and whether cause must always precede effect." Hana walked closer to the new display, studying the symbols with interest. After a moment, she tilted her head to the side. "Interesting," she said. "It looks like it's asking whether time is a line or a circle." Velcris made a sound that might have been laughter. "Please," it said. "Take at least a day before you solve this one. Give the rest of the galaxy time to process the last impossible thing you did." Everyone laughed at that. Even Hana. But she kept looking at the paradox, her mind already working through patterns and possibilities. Over the following days, more changes rippled through the galaxy. Several species that had been hostile toward humanity suddenly became friendly, seeking trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Others remained suspicious, worried that humans might use their new status to gain power. A few species became openly resentful, feeling that humanity had achieved in months what had taken them thousands of years. But mostly, the galaxy was curious. Everyone wanted to understand how humans thought. What made them different? How could a species so young and technologically primitive solve problems that had defeated ancient civilizations? Hana found herself at the center of this curiosity. She gave lectures, participated in symposiums, and worked with scholars from dozens of species. She tried to explain that there was nothing magical about human thinking. They just approached problems without preconceptions. They borrowed ideas from multiple fields. They weren't afraid to try unconventional solutions. "You make it sound simple," Quillick said during one of their conversations. "But it is not simple. It is profound. You think laterally where we think linearly. You see connections where we see categories. You embrace uncertainty where we demand precision." "Maybe," Hana said, "but I think any species could learn to think this way if they wanted to. It's not special to humans. It's just different from what you're used to." 2 months after solving the threshold equation, Hana stood once again in the Grand Archive's central chamber. The temporal causality paradox was still displayed in the Monument of Unsolved Mysteries, but now there were humans working on it. Not just Hana, but a team of human mathematicians, physicists, and philosophers who had traveled from Earth specifically to study the problem. They weren't alone. Alien scholars worked alongside them, learning human methods while teaching human researchers about advanced alien theories. It was the kind of cooperation that had been rare in the galaxy for centuries. Taesung joined Hana on the platform. "Earth's government approved the exchange program," he said. "Starting next year, we'll have 1,000 humans studying at alien universities, and 1,000 aliens studying on Earth." "That's wonderful," Hana said. "They also wanted me to give you a message," Taesung continued. "The President says thank you. You've changed humanity's fate. We're not just members of the Galactic Council now. We're important members. People listen when we speak." Hana looked at the temporal causality paradox. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "And I didn't do it to make humanity important. I just saw a puzzle and wanted to solve it." "I know," Taesung said. "That's what makes you perfect for this. You don't want glory. You just want to understand things." They stood together in silence for a while, watching the other researchers work. Then Hana smiled. "You know what I've been thinking?" "What?" "Every species in the galaxy has something unique to offer. The crystalline beings like Threx can process information in ways that organic brains can't. The gaseous species can perceive dimensions we can't see. Even species we think of as less advanced have insights we don't. Humans aren't special because we're better. We're special because we're different, and every difference is valuable. That's a good philosophy, Taesung said. I learned it from the equation, Hana said. The solution wasn't about forcing one approach to work. It was about combining different approaches and finding harmony between them. That's what the galaxy needs too. Not competition, but combination. Not one species dominating, but all species contributing their unique perspectives. As she spoke, the temporal causality paradox on the display seemed to shimmer slightly. Hana noticed and moved closer. She stared at it for a long moment, her head tilting to the side in that familiar gesture. Oh, she said softly. Oh, I see. Taesung recognized that tone. Hana, no. You.